At the restaurant, my sister Marceline shouted to everyone loudly, "Get out of here! Go find another table. This table is only for real families, not adopted kids like her." Everyone laughed. I could hear them whispering and giggling as if it was a funny joke. I looked around. People were smiling, nodding, and moving away from our table. It made my chest tighten a little, but I didn't say anything. Then, the waiter came over carrying a big, heavy piece of paper. He placed it in front of me on the table. I looked at it, and my eyes got wide. The bill was for $2,400. That was the total cost of their engagement party, all the food, drinks, decorations, and even the fancy desserts. It was more money than I could spend on a whole month for myself. But I just smiled, calmly picked up my glass of water, and took a slow sip. I was not angry. I was not scared. I just paid the bill. After the payment went through, I heard Marceline scream again. "Wait! Just a moment." Her voice was sharp, angry, and full of shock. But I didn't answer. I didn't feel scared or guilty like I used to. I felt calm, like I had finally found the right place in my mind where no one could hurt me anymore. The wind on the rooftop terrace blew through my coat. It was cold and sharp, but I didn't feel it. I felt strong. I felt ready. I felt calm and protected inside. But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me, where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it? Inside the glass walls, my adoptive family was laughing and cheering. My dad, Alaric, laughed at something my mom whispered. My mom, Isolde, smiled and looked happy. Marceline, my sister, the one getting married, was glowing. She had her hand on her fiancé's arm. Everyone looked like they were in a perfect picture of a happy family. But I knew the truth. They looked happy because I had just paid for everything. I had given them the money to make their day perfect, even though they had treated me like I didn't belong. The receipt from the restaurant was still warm in my hand. $2,400. That was not just money. It was the cost of a life I had never really been allowed to live. I stared at it, and my heart felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Marceline tapped her spoon against her glass again. The sound was loud and annoying. Everyone in the room got quiet and looked at her. She smoothed her silk dress and stared directly at me through the glass. Her eyes were cold, sharp, and dismissive. She waved her hand like I was a stray dog that didn't belong there. She mouthed my name, slowly and clearly so I could read her lips. "Amariel, you ruined the aesthetic." My mom nodded to her, turning her back to me to fix Marceline's veil. They didn't even wait to see if I would leave. They thought I would run away, cry, or apologize like I always used to. But this time was different. I didn't cry. I didn't bang on the glass. I didn't yell. I just folded the receipt, placed it in my pocket, and walked toward the elevator. The elevator doors closed, cutting off the view of their celebration. The elevator was quiet. Metal walls, soft lighting, a small space. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It felt protective, like a safe little bubble. I took my phone out of my clutch. There was already a text from my mom, Isolde. "You embarrassed us. Where are you going?" I didn't reply. I didn't type anything. I just tapped the little I next to her name and selected block caller. Then I did the same for my dad, Alaric, and for Marceline. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, my digital world was quiet, just like my physical world. I got into a cab and gave the driver my address. As the city lights blurred past the window, I let myself think about the last 5 years. People always ask why victims of financial abuse stay in families that take their money. They think we are weak, naive, or stupid. But I was none of those things. I was an architect. I understood structure, stability, and balance better than anyone. I wasn't weak. I just fell for an old psychological trick called the sunk cost fallacy. For years, I had treated my adoptive family like a slot machine. Every time I paid a bill, every time I covered a crisis, every time I fixed something with my own money, I convinced myself that if I just kept giving, eventually they would love me. I thought that if I gave enough, the lights would flash, the bells would ring, and the jackpot of love and acceptance would pour out at last. But it never did. Tonight, looking at the receipt, I finally understood. The machine was broken. It wasn't cold, it wasn't waiting for me to win, it was rigged. There was no jackpot. There was only an endless hungry mouth designed to take until I was empty. Paying that bill upstairs hadn't been given in. It had been the last coin I was willing to lose. It was my way of proving to myself that the game was broken. When I unlocked the door to my apartment, the air was still and clean. My home was quiet. My space was simple, minimalist, and precise, a stark contrast to the chaotic, expensive clutter of my parents' house. I didn't take off my coat. I walked straight to my desk and opened my laptop. I didn't need to search for files. I knew exactly where they were. I opened a spreadsheet called the ledger. I had started it 5 years ago, not because I wanted to be mean, but because I needed to keep track of my own money. The first entry was from 5 years ago. Callum's transmission repair. $1,200. My younger brother had crashed his car, and my dad said they didn't have money. I paid for it. Next, Marceline's tuition supplement for $1,000. Alaric's back taxes. $8,500. Isolde's medical emergency spa retreat. $3,000. Page after page, column after column, all the money I had given them blurred into a massive figure at the bottom of the spreadsheet. I had funded their lifestyle while I lived in a tiny studio apartment and shopped at cheap stores. I had been their safety net, their bank, their retirement plan. And they called me cold because I worked hard enough to keep my own life afloat. I stared at the blinking cursor. This spreadsheet wasn't just numbers anymore. It was proof. It was a weapon if I chose to use it. I hit print. The printer whirred to life in the corner. The rhythmic mechanical sound felt like a heartbeat. Page 1 slid out, then page 2, then 3, 4, 5, 12 pages of exploitation. I picked up the stack of papers. It had weight. It had mass. For the first time, all my sacrifice was visible. It wasn't invisible anymore. I put the ledger next to the receipt from the dinner. The audit was done. Now the collection process could begin. The next morning, I woke up not to sunlight, but to the vibration of my phone on the nightstand. It had been buzzing all night. I picked it up. My lock screen was a wall of notifications. Missed calls from blocked numbers, text messages from unknown numbers, voicemails, messages from neighbors, and family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. My mom had found a way around the block. She sent a message from our next-door neighbor's phone. It was time-stamped 7:04 a.m. Amariel, this is selfish and dramatic even for you. Your father is sick with worry. We need that credit card for the venue deposit today. Come back and apologize or don't bother coming for Christmas. You are destroying this family. I read the words slowly. Selfish. Dramatic. Destroying. These were words they always used. But they weren't worried about me. They were worried about the money. The family they claimed I was destroying was actually their financial system. And I had just removed the most important piece. I didn't reply. I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel the old urge to fix things. I just swiped the notification away. Then I opened Instagram. Marceline had been busy. She had posted a photo from the engagement party. Everyone was smiling, holding champagne glasses, looking happy. Her caption read, "So grateful to be surrounded by a real family who supports me unconditionally. Sad that some people choose jealousy over joy, but we won't let negativity ruin our blessings." The comments were full of people saying, "You deserve the best," and "Ignore the haters," and "Love you guys." They were rewriting history in real time. They were making me look like a bitter, jealous sister. The story they had been creating for years was finally taking shape online. I was being painted as the outsider, the workaholic, the cold one. I sat at my kitchen island, coffee in hand, and looked at the ledger I had printed the night before. 12 pages of undeniable truth. My brother Callum texted me from a burner app. "Yo, Dad's losing it. Just send the card info so he can pay the vendor. Stop being a psycho." I took a slow sip of coffee. Steam curled up into the quiet air of my apartment. I remembered the times Callum had called me a psycho when I refused to pay his parking tickets, only to pay them anyway because Dad said, "Family helps family." Not today. I picked up the ledger and slid it into my leather portfolio. I dressed in my sharpest suit, charcoal gray, tailored and severe. I wasn't dressing for a family meeting. I was dressing for war. I walked out of my apartment and into the morning light, the sun warm on my face, feeling ready for whatever came next. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I felt it vibrate, but I did not move. I did not care about who was calling or what message was there. Let them talk. Let them yell. Let them make up stories and rumors. I had proof of everything. I had receipts, documents, and the truth. I was done paying for other people's mistakes. I was done letting other people use me. I worked at an architecture firm. It was a very big firm in the middle of the city, a huge building made of glass and steel. When the sunlight hit the walls, the building shone like a giant mirror. It was the one place in my life where things made sense. Buildings followed rules. Numbers mattered. Physics mattered. Hard work mattered. When I walked through the revolving doors, I usually felt calm, like everything in the world was in its right place. But today something felt different. The air felt heavier. The lobby, usually so clean and quiet, felt tense, like it was holding its breath. My steps slowed just a little as I walked toward the main area. And then I saw her. Sitting on one of the shiny, comfortable chairs in the lobby was my great-aunt Seraphine. I froze for a second. Everyone in my family had stories about her. She was the one everyone whispered about when I was growing up. My mom called her a witch. My dad refused to speak her name. My relatives said she was selfish, cold, and rich beyond imagination. She was the villain in every story about our family. I had not seen her since I was 10 years old. But even after so many years, I recognized her immediately. She sat perfectly straight like a soldier. Her back was as straight as a ruler, her head high, her hands folded neatly on her lap. She wore a cream-colored suit that looked very, very expensive. It was so precise and elegant that I felt almost small standing next to her. She did not smile. She did not wave. She did not even blink as she looked right at me. She stood up slowly, picking up a thick leather folder from the chair beside her. "Amariel," she said. Her voice was cold, sharp, and smooth all at the same time, like ice sliding across metal. "We need a quiet room. Somewhere no one can hear." I did not ask questions. I did not ask how she found me. I just nodded. Somehow, I knew it was better not to ask. I led her past the receptionist, who barely looked up from scanning my ID badge, and through the secure doors that only employees could open. We walked in silence. The kind of silence that feels like it is holding secrets, like the air itself is waiting for something to happen. We reached a glass conference room that looked over the river. I closed the door behind us. The city outside looked peaceful, but here, everything felt like it was about to explode. "Hello, Aunt Seraphine," I said. "Do not waste time with greetings or pleasantries," she said. She placed the heavy folder on the table with a small, precise tap. "I saw what happened last night. The rooftop. The bill. You are leaving. Everything." My stomach tightened. "How do you know?" I asked quietly, my voice almost shaking. "I have eyes everywhere," she said. "I have been watching you for 11 months. The confession hung in the air. It felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. 11 months. She had watched everything I did. Every payment, every favor, every decision. And I had not even known. I looked at her more carefully. Really looked. And suddenly I understood something. The coldness my family complained about in her was not cruelty. It was precision. It was awareness. It was a calculation. It was the same look I sometimes saw when I looked in the mirror. "Why?" I asked. "If you were watching, why didn't you help me sooner? Why didn't you stop them from taking advantage of me? Why did you let me pay for Callum's car? Marceline's tuition?" She sat down slowly and folded her hands over the folder. "Because you weren't ready," she said. "If I had interfered 6 months ago, you would have defended them. You would have said they were struggling. You would have used my money to bail them out again. You would have helped them. I couldn't save you. You had to save yourself. You had to be the one to walk away. And last night you finally did. You stopped the transaction. You finally cut the cord. That means you are ready to see what I have in this folder." I stared at the folder. It was thick, stuffed with papers. The weight of it seemed heavier than it really was. "What is it?" I asked. "Proof," she said. She leaned back in her chair, and her eyes were sharp. She explained that everything my parents had told me about my life was a lie. They had said my birth parents died penniless. They had said that raising me had been a financial sacrifice. They had said that everything I had was because of their kindness. It was all a lie. I opened the folder slowly. The first page was a letter. The handwriting was old and faded. I did not recognize it. It was dated 25 years ago, 2 weeks before my birth. My parents died in the car accident that had changed my life forever. To our daughter, Amariel. So you will always have a foundation. Below it was a bank statement from the year I turned 18. My hands shook as I read the number. $1,400,000. I could not breathe. I had carried a story in my head my entire life. That my birth parents were irresponsible, that my adoptive parents had sacrificed everything to take me in. I had believed it. It was why I had paid for everything without question. I had thought I owed them everything. "They lied," I whispered. "They didn't just lie," Seraphine said. Her voice was sharp, precise like a knife. She turned the page. It was a legal document. Isolde, my mother, was listed as the trustee. Seraphine was the original executive. "I set up this trust with your father," Seraphine said. "I was supposed to watch over it. But when you were 7, Alaric came to me with forged documents. He told me the fund was wiped out by bad investments. He showed me papers claiming there was nothing left. He told me they were struggling to feed you. And I believed him. I stepped back. I let them play the heroes because I thought they were actually sacrificing for you. I didn't know I was leaving the fox in charge of the hen house. I flipped through the pages. They were like a map of my stolen life. Every withdrawal was there, listed in black and white. $12,000, Marceline's private school tuition. $55,000, family vacation to Disney World. $8,000, my father's consulting business. I remembered that vacation. I stayed at Mrs. Ginevra's house for a week. My parents said they couldn't afford a ticket for me. They left me behind while they enjoyed themselves. I turned to the most recent page. My hands trembled. The transaction was dated 3 days ago. $25,000, Venetian rooftop deposit. The world tilted. I hadn't just paid for a bar tab. I had paid for the entire engagement party. The venue, the flowers, the champagne. Everything. It was funded by the money my real parents had left for me. Seraphine looked at me. She understood the anger that had replaced the shock in my chest. They stole $1 million from an orphan, I said. Not just $1 million, Seraphine corrected. Almost $3 million. And they are still taking it. They think the well is bottomless. She reached into her purse and pulled out 2 thick envelopes sealed with wax. This, she said, tapping the first one, is a cease and desist order freezing every asset they own. This, she tapped the second, is a criminal complaint for embezzlement and fraud. She looked at me. Her eyes were hard, dark, and unforgiving. They are hosting a brunch today, she said. At the country club. To celebrate the engagement. I stood up. I did not need to ask where the money for the brunch came from. I closed the folder. Let's go, I said. It's time we crashed the party. The country club was a sea of pastel tablecloths, silverware shining under the morning sun, and people pretending to smile. My family was at the center table. They laughed too loudly, talked too much, held their glasses as if they were holding crowns. My father, Alaric, stood in the middle giving a toast about family support. I could almost taste the irony. Seraphine adjusted her silk scarf. She looked like a general on a battlefield she had already planned to win. Ready? She asked. Yes, I said. Let's burn it down. We walked in. The room went silent. Glasses paused midair. Conversations stopped. People turned their heads. The shock spread outward from the door like a wave. My mother saw us. Her smile froze. Her eyes widened. Panic replaced the fake warmth on her face. She stood up really fast. Her chair made a loud screeching noise on the shiny marble floor. Amariel, she whispered angrily, running toward us to stop what was happening before it got to the main table. What are you doing here? You weren't invited and you brought her. This is a private event. You can't just show up like this. It's not a private event, Seraphine said. Her voice was loud and clear, and everyone in the room could hear her. It's a crime scene. The whole room went completely silent. People stopped talking. The music seemed to stop. Alaric froze, holding his glass halfway to his mouth. Marceline looked up from her plate of fruit, her eyes moving quickly between me and the big envelope Seraphine was holding. She didn't understand what was happening, but she could feel something very wrong in the air. Don't cause a scene, Isolde whispered, her eyes looking worried and a little panicked. We can talk later. Just leave now before anyone notices. No, I said. My voice was calm, the same calm I used when I told a worker that a building wall was broken. I didn't yell or shake. I just said, we're done talking. We are here to give notice. Seraphine walked past my mother without hesitation and went straight to the main table. She didn't shout. She didn't throw anything. She didn't even look angry. She simply put the legal papers on the white tablecloth, right next to the pretty flowers I didn't even know I had paid for. It felt so strange, seeing papers like that on such a fancy table. Alaric froze. Isolde, Seraphine said. These are papers for a federal lawsuit. They say you stole money, lied, and didn't do the right thing with trust money. As of 9 o'clock this morning, all your money is frozen. Your house, your accounts, the money for your business, everything is frozen. Alaric dropped his glass. It smashed on the floor. Orange juice and champagne spilled all over his shiny Italian shoes. He bent down to try to clean it, but it was too late. You can't do that, he said, his voice shaking and cracking. That money, we raised her. It was for her. We took her in when no one else would. We did everything for her. You didn't take me in, I said, stepping forward. You took my trust fund. I was just the wrapper. The guests were the present, and the money was the gift inside. People started whispering now. They leaned forward in their chairs, curious and shocked. I saw Marceline's fiancé, a man who really cared about looking good in front of others, slowly take his hand away from hers. Marceline noticed immediately. She looked at her parents. Panic rose in her chest like water in a bucket ready to spill over. What does that mean? What about the wedding money? The checks go out tomorrow. Marceline asked, her voice high and worried, trembling with fear. There are no checks, I said. The money is gone. The well is dry. But you said there was plenty. You said the trust was endless. Marceline shouted at our mother, Isolde. Her face turned red, and her hands shook with anger. Isolde jumped toward her daughter, trying to quiet her, but it was too late. The pressure was too high, and the house of lies was too weak. Marceline pushed her mom's hand away and stood up, her face twisted in anger and selfishness. You told me it was my money, she screamed. The sound filled the room like a siren. You said Amariel was just the helper. You said her parents left it for us because they owed you. Her words hung in the air. Ugly and true. She knew. All this time, the perfect daughter knew exactly where the money came from. She hadn't just been spoiled, she had helped take it. She was part of the plan. I looked to my left. The wedding videographer, who was supposed to film happy family moments, was standing about 10 feet away. His camera was up. The red recording light was steady. He had everything. The cheating, the confession, the family falling apart. Isolde looked at the camera, then at her rich future in-laws who were staring at her in horror. At that moment, she realized she had lost all her social status. All the respect she thought she had was gone in one instant. It's a misunderstanding, Alaric tried, his voice breaking. We can explain. You can explain it to the police, Seraphine said calmly. We already filed the complaint. You'll have plenty of time to talk to the authorities. I looked at them one last time. My mother was shaking in her fancy dress. My father looked small and defeated. My sister was crying, not for what she had done, but because she lost her money and her privileges. They all looked like strangers to me. People I didn't even know. Come on, Aunt Seraphine, I said, turning my back on the mess. I have a new life to build. We walked out the same way we came, leaving the quiet and shocked people behind us. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. What happened next was fast, harsh, and completely their own fault. By Monday morning, the video of Marceline screaming had been shared online. Not by me, but by one of the guests who realized the family was lying. It went viral in just a few hours. People didn't see a bride under stress. They saw a spoiled girl furious that her stolen money was taken away. They saw the truth about a family that looked perfect but wasn't. 2 weeks later, Alaric and Isolde were charged with crimes. The police said they stole money, lied, and didn't handle the trust properly. Because the money moved across state lines and involved banks, the federal government got involved. They were going to spend years in prison. Not just a little time, years. Marceline's fiancé left her before the wedding checks were even canceled. He said she lied about her values and disappeared back into his own safe, rich world. Without the trust money to support her, Marceline had nothing. No career, no husband, no reputation. Everything she thought she owned was gone. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new office. I had designed it myself. Clean walls, bright sunlight, strong furniture. On my desk were plans for a community center for foster kids, paid for entirely by the recovered trust. I was no longer building on sand. I was building on rock. Something real and strong that would last. I thought about the paper house metaphor. My family had built a beautiful, enviable life. From the outside, it looked perfect. The parties, the clothes, the status, but it was all paper walls held up by money they stole from me. They had spent 20 years painting the paper to look like marble, pretending it was real. But the moment I stopped supporting it, the entire house collapsed. It had no foundation, no truth. Nothing was real except the money they stole. Great Aunt Seraphine came in carrying 2 coffees. She put one on my table. Ready for the site visit? She asked. Always, I said. I picked up my phone. 0 missed calls from my mom. 0 texts from my dad. They were allowed 1 call a week from jail, and they used it to call lawyers, not me. I felt free. I smiled a real, happy smile. One that reached my eyes. I turned off my phone and put it in the drawer. The deal was finally closed. Everything was permanent and done.